Hello and welcome back to Endstep, the Upkeep after show. Last week,
You dropped something.
I did. I am no longer the Monarch. The game did end though, so
Game did
that
end,
seems
so-
sufficient. Last week we were playing with the new Commander Precons from Outlaws at Thunder Junction, except the week before we made a video talking about some upgrades that we made. So we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about these decks, a little bit about this game, and before that, if you haven't seen that game, you need to go watch it because, well, one, it was a lot of fun, but two, this video won't make a whole lot of sense if you haven't seen it, so I'm giving you time to go watch it. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this game. So, what do you guys think about Outlaws of Thunder Junction, the Cowboy set? Is it
Yeehaw.
kind of weird, or you guys kind of dig it?
It's weird for sure, but it's good.
You're here for it?
It's got some heat.
Yeah.
I was definitely, skeptical at first. Like, Cowboys, like, what are we doing? But really, really cool set.
It's a very strong set too. Like I mentioned in our podcast that like there's a lot of stuff that even outside of Commander I'm like, ooh, that's kind of spicy. I'm kind of excited to see how this works. So yeah, the cowboy hats are a little goofy, but we should have got cowboy hats for the episode.
We should have.
Flavor fail, but it's all right.
Yeah, we can blame Stave.
It is
It's Dave's fault.
He was supposed to supply him before he left.
Yeah, definitely. What do you guys think about the precons though? Did you guys like the themes, or do you think that there's something that they should have done for a cowboy set?
I think they're solid. I like them. Just the flavor of the one I played of Gunslinger, quick draw. Yeah.
Well, and the commander should have been a horse.
That would have been kind of
That
cool.
would have been
Or
Have
like,
one of them care about the saddle
Or like
mechanic.
yeah.
Yeah.
finally
Like a
ma-
partner with.
finally
Something like
finally
that.
make a horse. Be able to make a horse typal deck. Technically, you can, but there's only like 5 actual horse cards, and then just a bunch of changelings.
Shadowfax though. That would be pretty
Shadowfax
great.
would be cool.
Build a pony.
When that set came out, I was this close to building a horse typal deck, but then I looked and literally there's like 5 or 6 horse cards. Period.
There's a horse that makes your horses indestructible.
Yeah, the ones there are good, but like in terms of actual horses, there's only a few of them, and then then the rest of the creatures would just be the changelings that are every creature type, which is like
Boring.
workable, but it's just boring. It's not fun.
So, with going about upgrading these precons, what did you? Well, we have a whole video that's describing our what cards we cut, what cards we added, and why. So go check that video out for full context. But just as a quick thing, do you feel like those upgrades were sufficient? Would you have gone farther if you could have? And then, do you think that says anything about the strength or weaknesses of these precons out of the box?
That's all I have to say about that.
About that card.
That was kind of cringe.
This is a Mardu deck with 2 board wipes, and one of them is Hex. I'm so mad.
That is kind of dumb.
I'm not
pretty bad.
expecting farewell or anything, but come on.
Well,
Rather,
even then, they've put farewell in precons at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, they have.
It is kinda
rather
weird.
God, it's 4 cents. Also,
Yeah.
the lands were atrocious in this one.
Yeah,
so.
I remember you said that you cut a bunch of the actual duels and just added more basics,
Yes.
which is an interesting decision.
I'm not gonna lie.
It worked out.
When I was looking at the deck list for that, it was reminding me a lot of the Edgar Markov precon mana base of just like how it's a solid deck on its own. Edgar Markov is obviously better than that, but like it would have been if you hadn't changed it. It would have been very held back by its mana base. It was not.
I would have
not great.
been Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was too bad. We talked about maybe adding more duels to your deck, but we were like, we don't have that many like other duels just laying around we can toss in there real quick and stay within budget. So you know what, it's probably fine. All you having so many basics means all your lands are going to come in untapped, but then
They sure did. All those mountains I got and no
Yeah.
islands. I mean, yeah, that's the biggest thing of hindsight. Maybe that more duels, more consistent ways of getting blue mana. Because obviously that's sort of a case by case thing. You don't always
Well, sure,
you're not guaranteed to get mana screwed. But I will say when I was looking at the upgrades, I really didn't look at the mana curve at all of what I was adding. So I may have ended up adding a lot of blue without changing the mana.
yeah.
The mana to
maybe should have added a couple more islands, cut a couple mountains.
yeah, I mean, I could have. But other than that, damage. The way this deck really wants to win is there's a few very key pieces that will combo into a bunch of damage to kill people. But if you don't have those pieces, you're kind of just durdling a little bit for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You did get to see a couple of the cards that I think would be like the key players, like the one that makes the tokens, like any spells, like spellslinger cards that are like when you cast a non-creature, make a token, top tier, and then you also had Gutter Sniper early.
Yeah, I was gonna say I should have. I had him out. I should have just brought him, but yeah, I had. Yeah, Gutter Snipe early. That's a good one. The alternate commander, she's good. There, I know Niv Mizzet. Parun is in there. He's really good. There's I put Firebrand Archer in there. I mean, so there's ways in there, but it's just these very key pieces. And without tutors, it's just luck of the draw at that point. So
and you drew a lot of cards, so it's kind of
yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of the stuff I added was card draw to try and thin the deck and get to those pieces. I just still didn't. So
yeah. With this deck, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of upgrades necessarily that I wanted to do because the whole purpose of this deck is to play your opponent's stuff. So you don't really want to put a whole lot of overpowered, really strong cards like in the deck because the whole idea is let me play whatever my opponents are playing. But there was a couple of good stuff that I put in, like Mirage Mirror. I think is probably the best upgrade I made to that deck. It's a really, really good artifact that could just fit in. It slots into a lot of different game plans.
There's always tricky things you can do with it.
I don't know how much I was gonna take on that one turn when Preston attacked me, but I turned it into the propaganda that Tommy had, and I only ended up having to worry about one creature. Towards the end of that game, I turned it into a creature, blocked, was able to give myself one more turn. Didn't really matter. I think that it was a very viable upgrade to that deck. Yeah, I took 4 lands out because 38 is too many lands for me.
at least he said for him, not for everyone, because it's.
I mean,
everyone.
I think if you run 34 lands in your commander deck, you're probably fine.
I'm really curious about that deck specifically, and I know that this is the only game you've played with it so far, so maybe you can't really answer this. But we talked about it on our podcast because we talked about, I can't remember it, but the board wipe that's in that precon that exiles all the stuff that gets killed, right? And you can play them. But we were talking about on our podcast that it's kind of sus that, commander decks are so focused on their synergies that if you're just taking a bunch of random cards from other people, maybe you're going to hit, generically good cards, but if you hit, a card that, if you hit one of my cards that's just, if you do this with the desert, you do this, that wouldn't do you really any good, right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel like that went?
Well, I mean, that's all going to be game-specific. I'm going to have different options whenever I play this in different pods,
Yeah.
Maybe it's not always going to be playing against a deck that deals with deserts or something to that effect.
But
it's really good against my deck because a lot of his stuff is already in that outlaw creature type stuff. So it worked a lot when he targeted me. I feel like
I don't think that this deck is necessarily going to be a powerhouse in every game that it's in. It's really more dependent on the decks that it's playing against.
yeah, I agree. As far as my deck, I am really glad I added that Skull Clamp. I don't know how many cards it drew me, but
A ton.
a lot. And if that hadn't happened, I would not have won this game. I wouldn't get anywhere near winning this game. So that Skull Clamp did a ton of work. But I will say that it's really weird that my commander, which I actually think is a very strong commander, but it specifically wants me to sack my deserts, and then it doesn't give me a way to give me my deserts back. And there's only a handful of ways in the deck to get your deserts back, one of them being Hizazon, Shaper of Sands, which also makes 1/1s, so for the Skull Clamp. But in general, I thought it was weird that there were several deserts in the deck, or several deserts that exist that weren't in the precon, one of them being Arid Archway, which is from the main set, which I thought was really weird. It's a desert from the main set. It's not like an expensive card. It's just an uncommon from the set. It just feels like a weird choice. So Yuma wanting to sack deserts and then not playing all the deserts and then not having consistent ways to always get your lands back was a little sus. So I'm going to be honest. I think that these are kind of mid as far as overall precons. I actually like all of these commanders. I think all the commanders are really sweet. I think all of these decks have several really cool cards. Sand Scout, we talked about this on our podcast. This card is sweet. I'm going to put this in at least a couple of my decks. But honestly, overall, I feel like the deck construction on these was nowhere near as good as a lot of the other precons. We've done gosh, how many Precon episodes have we done now? Or like sort of Precon episodes. Like this is maybe the 5th one. Maybe these are the worst. Am I off base here, or do you guys maybe agree?
I don't know if I'd call these the worst, but
This is better than the elf one I played.
Oh, the elf one.
I'd say,
Lord of the Rings episode.
I wasn't in the Lord of the Rings episode, so I don't really know how those Precons did.
I will say with mine, like, I nagged on the lands and board wipes, which I fully support that argument, but I think the creatures and stuff on my deck was fine. All that I was pretty happy with, but
Just the board wipe decisions were kind of sus. Yeah.
what decisions?
what decisions? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to judge. It's hard to judge them all at the same time because I think they are very different. They have different levels of construction and different levels of power and with just how well they were built. I know, for example, like this one, it's an Izzet Spellslinger. It kind of has the same trouble that some other archetypes have, where it's like there's one powerhouse and he's in the 99 of this. That's Niv Mizzet Parun. Like if it, so it's like, yeah, you can play this, but if you're gonna play an Izzet Spellslinger, just play the one that's real good. So I mean, it just gets outclassed. But so I think on an individual level, I think there's an argument to be made that these aren't the greatest, but I don't think they're bad by any means. I think they're just not as good as they.
Well, I also think we haven't been playing a lot of the really weak ones they've been pumping out. Like, a lot of the ones we've been playing are the good ones because we were all interested in playing them.
Yeah. But
True.
we've been playing a lot of the Precons from the last.
But, like, the sets where you only get, like, 2, we don't play those ones.
We did an Eldraine. Steven and Jason played upgraded Precons.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to like diss on the design or anything. I liked the themes of all of these decks. I love all of the commanders. I think all the face commanders are sweet. But it was just an observation that it felt like some of the deck construction choices were a little strange. So I just wanted to see what you guys had to think about that. But what are your guys' plans with these decks? Are you going to use them to upgrade already existing decks you have? Are you going to keep these decks? Are you just going to take them apart? What are you planning on doing with these decks?
I'm probably going to try playing this version of the deck once more because it's almost the exact same deck as the Mari deck I already have, which I think I like that. I definitely like Mari more as a commander, but adding red and white is nice to have a few more options for stuff, but I don't know. I'm just going to have to test it out a few more times before I know for certain. I might build up the backup commander at some point. He's really cool.
Yeah.
But that one's really expensive because treasure stuff is pricey.
Probably end up using this to start/upgrade a Niv Mizzet deck because I do at some point want to build Niv Mizzet. He's fun. He's cool. So I think a lot of pieces. I mean, he's in the 99, so he already synergizes well with a lot of the stuff in this deck. So that's probably what I'll end up doing is using a lot of these pieces for him.
Just going with the Niv Mizzet Curiosity combo, I see.
That's what I was gonna say.
All right, yeah. Do you know what Curiosity is?
Not off the top of my head.
It's an enchantment. It says whenever enchanted creature deals damage to a player, draw a card. And Niv Mizzet says whenever you draw a card, deal damage. And Curiosity says when it deals damage, draw a card. You see what I'm getting at?
Oh yeah. No, I know there's 1.5 million things that combo with Niv Mizzet, so
this deck I'm gonna keep it. I used to have a Sultai deck. It was Zaxara, this Hydra's, X-cost spells like that. That was cool. Got real tired of it, real bored of it. I seriously doubt I will get bored of this deck just because it's going to be different in whatever game I'm playing. I think that it's similar in that regard to Preston's Gyruda deck where you have a different game
Every single time we play.
Exactly. Just because it's, you're playing other people's stuff, so whatever the different decks you're playing at a certain time, it's going to change however your deck plays out.
That's probably my favorite deck, and I've had it for years.
I love that deck.
Because of that, I think that this is going to provide a lot of fun and interesting games, so I'm going to keep it together. Might change it, upgrade it a little bit more here and there. Definitely going to do more than $50 upgrades like we did with this. The Rhystic Studies going in here, Sylvan Library. I'm going to make it good stuff.
Well, you need all those, just generically good cards to support the fact that you're just trying to steal other people's cards. So there is the argument to be made there. But the thing with theft decks specifically is they might get a little old to play against, but playing with them, it's hard to get old because like you said, every pod you play is going to play different because the idea that it's going to be the exact same 4 decks every time is incredibly unlikely. So it should lead to interesting things.
And this isn't something that I'm gonna bust out every single time I get together to play with people. You know, it's because I don't want that to happen. I don't want people to like, oh, you're playing Gonti again. Oh man, I don't even get to play my own cards. Like it's gonna be similar to Joyra in that it'll be an every now and then kind of deck because you know I don't want that. I don't want those feel bads going around the table.
For me, I have a Hizazon deck, which is kind of a deserts deck, but it's mostly a land destruction deck. But it has a lot of desert stuff in it to work off of Hizazon. So some of the cards in this precon are going to go in there. So Yuma, for example, the face commander here is probably going in there. Sand Scout's going in there. A couple other cards, but for the most part, there's not actually as much crossover as I was hoping. And I think it's because I made Hizazon too narrow by saying I want it to be a land destruction deck and not just like a straight up desert deck. Because if that were the case, then there would be a lot more of this precon that I could use to upgrade Hizazon. But I like having a deck that makes people go like, ugh. I like playing those decks. Putting people in positions where they have to think about how they're going to beat me and how they're going to win. I like challenging people in my play group. And also just being a little bit of a tool.
I don't play Light Paws enough. I need to break you.
With that said, I'm really only going to take like 3 or 4 cards out of this deck to put in there, and then we're just going to have a bunch of cards laying around. Because the problem is it's not like I can take those few cards and then someone else can take this deck and use it, because I'm taking the best desert cards, and then the desert deck doesn't work. Luckily, this deck is kind of just a Naya landfall deck, so if someone just wants to build a actual land deck with this, they could. So I'm probably just going to take the couple cards I need for Hizazon and then be like, who wants to build a land deck, and then just give the rest of the 99 to
Yeah,
him.
Jason exiled World Shaper and Avenger of Zendikar in one turn.
Yeah.
So there's some good land stuff in there.
Absolutely, yeah. I discarded Omnath, the Gruul one, early on. Yeah, that card's sweet. I love that card. Well, any final thoughts on this game, these decks, anything like that?
I won in my heart.
You did. I've already almost done getting the stat sheet together for the season, but it would be really fun to have a sheet that's like, who committed suicide the most in the season? Because, like, you've done it at least 3 or 4 times.
I probably have done it as much as the other 4 of you combined. And I might still beat that number.
Yeah, I'd believe it.
It's always so fun to do that.
I do think it was pretty great when you just played a land and dealt 1 damage to Tommy and killed him. I thought that was kind of funny.
That 1-2 punch right at the end there was just rude. Between you tapping my exotic orchard for a blue after I was getting blue mana screwed the whole time.
You missed it. You searched for a library after you were dead. Or, I mean, for an island after you were dead.
It did.
Oh yeah, I missed that, yeah. And then you hitting me for 1 damage off of a land drop. Yeah, that was rude. That was rude. But yeah.
That was really funny. I'm not gonna lie.
It was funny.
I was like, is there a way I can kill both of you this turn? And then I top decked that, and I was like, oh hell yeah.
Oh, it was a top deck, even better.
Well, and that's one of the deserts that wasn't in the precon. That was one of the ones I had to add in there. This precon does have the new dual lands that are deserts, and they do the same thing. They enter tap, they tap for 1 of 2 colors, enter, and they deal 1 damage to any player. So, well, first of all, I'm glad that we have dual land deserts. It makes desert decks so much more viable. But that little bit of damage here and there obviously sometimes matters. So that's kind of nice.
The only point of life that matters is the last one.
Which is why you play Ancient Tomb.
Exactly.
No comment. I've just decided I'm going to stay out of this debate because I'm
going to pick Morgan up and beat Jason to death with him.
I don't own an Ancient Tomb. I don't like Temple of the False God in most decks, but I'm not gonna, no comment. Y'all do you, have fun with it.
So we actually have already filmed Revenge Week at the time that we are recording this. We are pushing Revenge Week. In fact, we didn't even plan on making this episode. We just kind of decided to do it last second. So we pushed Revenge Week back an episode so we could do this. So that's already been filmed. People already chose their decks. I don't know if anyone would have chosen one of these decks to bring back, but that's already been decided. But I will try to make it so that the outcomes and events of this game are affected in our stats episode. If you're curious to know how long are our games, who won the most, stuff like that, that video is coming pretty soon. It'll come out a week or 2 after the season finale. which is coming out next week. So make sure you're subscribed, hit like, leave comments, all the YouTube algorithm stuff that you're supposed to do. It helps the small YouTube channels grow. And I think that's it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.